My name is Mark Chang. I'm with Iron Realty. I'm the broker at the company. I've been the broker for about 14 years. So I've been in the business about 15, 16 years. And so every year we close over 1,500 transactions on a normal year, not coronavirus years, but on normal years, we close about 1,500. So over 14 years, 1,500 transactions a year. It's quite a lot of transactions that we've gained a lot of experience from. So what we're hoping is that we can share some of that experience with you today, and that will be useful to you, I hope. Okay. Let's see. So I wanted to give people a little bit of time to print out the handouts. So hopefully you guys have them. And then also while we are waiting, let's do a poll and see who is here. And that way we can kind of tailor it toward our audience here. So the two questions are, how many years have you been doing real estate? So doing real estate, you may have had your license for a while, but I would say comfortably doing real estate. So if someone asked you to buy or sell a home, at some point, when would you feel comfortable? That's, I would say, is your start of your career. Feel comfortable working with them. Great. So I myself have been doing this for over 15 years. Initially I started doing sales only, pretty much sales only, and then I became the broker and started managing. And now I'm basically the exact opposite. I really don't do sales too much. I'm really focused on managing, supporting the agents, doing these kind of trainings, solving issues, and also my most important job is recruiting. So for people who came in a little bit after, I will repost the link to the handout. I'll cut and paste. So we're going to rely on the chat box to give feedback. So if you have any feedback, going too fast, you missed something, I will be happy to keep an eye on it. That is the handout link. I just reposted it. If you came in after I reposted it the first time, then you'll need it to get into the materials. And in the beginning, I'll be, or throughout the course, I'll be putting it on the screen, but it might be a little bit difficult to read if you are using a smaller device like a iPad or a iPhone. If you're using a computer with a screen, it might be okay. Hopefully it comes out clearly. Okay, I think we'll end the poll. We've got some responses. So I think the majority of the people are kind of seasoned agents from our poll. So we've got actually two. We've got less than a year, which we've got about a quarter of our classes less than a year, and more than that have completed less than 3 transactions. So it's great. I'm glad you guys are here. But we also have some seasoned agents with 10 or more years of experience, making up about 34% of the class today. So quite a big big range, which is good. We want to educate everybody. Okay, we'll end the poll. And let's see, let me do one thing really quick. Okay, so if you guys have the handout, we can start, and I will share my screen. So since coronavirus has been around, we have basically moved all of our training to Zoom, which is good in some ways because we can get more people. And you don't have to come to the office. You can be anywhere. You can, so Irvine people can listen to the training as well as Arcadia, as well as Rowland Heights. So we have all three of those offices. So if you look at the packet, the majority of it is the contract, and then we'll start with here. So the biggest thing that I always mention to start is these three letters, CYA. And CYA basically means cover your assets. And so the whole class is basically how we can manage risk and prepare the contract in a way that it'll protect both you and protect your client. Because if there is an issue and you do get involved in some type of issue where you're going to be having to pay out attorneys and things like that, obviously it's not worth it. The minimum cost for an attorney, usually if there's an issue and someone is going to actually file a complaint, a legal complaint against you, is usually probably $20,000 to $30,000, even if it gets solved early. And if it gets solved later than that, the bill could run up to $100,000 or more. The good thing is we are very, very strong with these kind of trainings, and then also with our forms and our practices, that we have less than 1 out of 1,000 cases that end up in some type of legal issue. So less than 1 out of 1,000. So you have to do 1,000 cases to get 1,000 transactions to get 1 case. So hopefully, hopefully we can reduce that number even more. So the most dangerous thing to do in real estate is thinking it's too easy. So especially for the new agents, I think there's a misconception about real estate that, oh, well, I can just get into real estate and I can make, you know, some money on the side part-time and it'll be easy. It's not quite that easy, and you need to make sure you're following all the same standards that a agent that has 20 years of experience is following. Otherwise, if you leave something out, it could cost you more than that commission that you earned if you did it for a friend or something like that. Okay, so make sure that we always encourage people to ask questions. We as a company, we have 3 managers. We have me, we have Cindy, who's on the call today, and then we have David, who's my dad, who started the company about 21 years ago. So all 3 of us, we work really hard to try to respond to you. If you have a question, send a contract over. We'll review it. We'll respond with the changes, and hopefully we can help you solve some of your problems. So we get calls like that 24/7, literally 24/7. So sometimes people call us at 12 a.m. We don't necessarily pick up, but we do get calls at that time, and then we'll do our best to return your call the next day. So that is the way we try to support our agents. So make sure you ask questions. Okay. So you guys can all see, and hopefully you have the handout. I put the page numbers on the top right. So if you see on the top right, there's a page number. We're on page 2. This should look familiar for many of you. If you have ever searched the MLS, I'm trying to load the chat so I can see if there's questions. There we go. Okay, good. So this should look familiar to you. This is an MLS printout. If you are a new agent, have never joined the MLS, this is what our system looks like. So maybe you're searching Zillow or Redfin or any of the other websites. This is kind of our version of that, but it's for agents only. So it includes additional information. Now on the bottom, you'll see There's information such as the listing agent, Lily Listing from ABC Realty. These are all fake. I filled these in. It'll include additional details, like if maybe someone wrote in that someone died on the property within the last year. That normally won't be shown in the public public websites like Zillow. People will normally show that in the agent comments, so the agent can decide how to deal with that and how to let their client know. Or if they even want to show that property to a client. Some clients just are not going to buy a property where someone passed away inside. Some clients don't care. So this is kind of a fake property or an example property that we have. And I've kind of given, on most of these classes in person, I've always made our agents kind of look around the MLS and figure out what on here we should be aware of. Since it's Zoom, I've added some of the answers. That way it's easier for us to communicate because I can't see you guys and I can't talk to you as much, and there's less back and forth. So here on this page, you'll see there's 4 different things that we kind of need to be aware of when we're writing the offer and when we're negotiating. So this property, if you see right here under the description, it says, this is a beautifully remodeled 2-story home in the gated hillside community, low HOA dues. So number one thing we need to know that, okay, number one, it's in an HOA. So if you're a new agent, HOAs are like a community where many of the similar properties are built together, and they are usually subject to similar rules. For example, if you have a home with all Spanish style homes, the HOA will say, okay, if you do any modifications on that home, it needs to conform to our standard. Or maybe it's a condo community where all the condominiums are attached together. If they're all attached together, then a lot of times, for example, the termite service will be taken care of by the HOA dues. So that means the HOA will collect a fee, and then maybe every 5 years, they will do some type of termite treatment using the fees that they collect, okay? So number one, we need to make sure that we know that there's an HOA, because there could be subject to restrictions when the buyer purchases the property. Number two, under here, chandelier and TV and bracket in master bedroom. So we get this question often too. What is included in the property when you purchase it? Is everything included? What about the TVs? What about speakers? What about refrigerator? What about chandelier? So that's something number two that we need to kind of pay attention to. Chandelier is typically included with the property because it's what we call attached. So under here, under exclusions, they are saying, okay, everything is normal except the chandelier in this case is not included, the TV is not included, and the bracket on the TV is not included. Okay. The number three on the bottom, we have solar panel lease needs to be assumed by the buyer. So as solar becomes more and more popular, and it is, there's a law mandating that a lot of the newer homes have to have solar. They will become an issue, and they have been an issue in the past. And what happens is solar panels, sometimes if they're leased, what that means is someone has something on top of the building, and the previous owner, the seller, has signed that, okay, I'm going to pay $300 to have these solar panels on my roof to generate electricity. Now, this lease is usually like 20 years long. What if he sells it before the end of the lease? Who is responsible? Do we just remove the solar panels and then return them? And the answer is no. Most of the time, the vast majority of the time, the solar panel lease will have to come with the property, which means if they bought them 5 years ago or 10 years ago, right when solar panels were new and they're very expensive, that lease payment would be much, much higher than it is today, where solar panels are a little cheaper. So even if that's the case, the new buyer will have to assume or take over that lease and pay that higher cost. And I've had transactions fall out because the solar panel leases were way too high. And we'll talk more in depth about it later if you have questions. Number 4, right here on the private remarks, this is where agents will make their remarks that are not public, that don't go to all the websites. Seller may require a leaseback to purchase a replacement home. What this means is the seller is going to continue living in the property they're selling for a period of time, and they will use that time, maybe it could be 2 months, could be 3 months, could be 4 months, could be longer, to find another home to purchase, okay? Because right now, especially with coronavirus, purchasing a home is not easy. There's limited inventory, prices are very high, everything is very competitive. So even if the seller may sell their home, they don't have a place to move to, okay? And it might take them a little while to move, okay? Hopefully that makes sense. So those are the kind of 4 issues we're dealing with. We're going to be using this as our example property. So 123 Pine Street, any city, and it's a 4-bedroom property, 2,500 square feet. And right now the list price is $1 million. So this is our example property. So we're gonna go through this kind of like a practice transaction, and we'll be writing an offer on this property, okay? So here's another little area that we usually have our agents answering, but I've included all the answers this time since we are on Zoom to go over the overall process. So suppose that we've shown our buyer 123 Pine Street and the buyer likes it. He says, well, I love the property, I want to move in, or I want to buy it. What do we do? I want to make an offer on it, okay? Here are the steps, people that we need to call. Number 1, the first person we should call is call the loan officer. So you want to call loan officer, make sure we have the money to buy, right? So before we even brought the buyer to the home, we should have a good practice, and this is something you should take a note of, especially if you're a new agent, is a good practice that before you even let a buyer see a property, don't even show them a single property until they send you a pre-approval letter. So they've gone to a bank, they've gone to a mortgage broker, and they've talked to them, provided tax returns, provided pay stubs, and they said, okay, you're qualified up to 1 million, or you're qualified up to 1.2 million. And so personally, as a best practice, I wouldn't allow anybody in my car unless they had that pre-approval letter already. And they kind of narrowed the area they're looking. So, so we call the loan officer, we ask for the approval time. So here's another problem that coronavirus or COVID-19 is causing. Loans are taking longer to process, okay? So a lot of lenders, like big banks, they're overwhelmed with all these loans because the rates are super, super low. So what's happening is everybody who has an existing mortgage is also trying to refinance. So in addition to the regular people buying homes that they have to process now, they've got this huge amount of loan volume coming in of people who want to actually refinance. And so that it's a really good idea. If you have a home, if you have a mortgage, you should look into refinancing. It's a good time to save some money. We have our own loan department, so we see the actual number of loans skyrocketing. So, but despite that, luckily we deal with very small lenders and they're able to handle the loan volume. And so our closing time is still within 30 days, okay? So if you have a loan, you want to do a refinance, we can still close it in 30 days. Banks like Citibank, I talked to a Citibank officer a few weeks ago, and then Bank of America too. They're taking 120 to 150 days to close a refinance. and their purchases are taking longer too, like 45 days or up. Okay, so the number one source of delays in any transaction when you're purchasing is usually, like I would say 80% of the time or more, is the loan or the bank not getting approved and not following the timeline that you had set. Okay, that's the majority of the delays in escrow. And delays in escrow can cost your client the property, because if you don't close on time, the seller after some period of time can kick you out and say, hey, you didn't close on time, you lose the property, I'm going to sell it to the next guy because they're ready to close. Okay, so it's really important to have that good loan officer. It's really important to have a trustworthy approval time. So whenever we ask for approval time, I usually add time, especially if you're doing one of those, stated income loans with East West, HSBC, any of those, that I feel safer with like a 60-day closing. Okay, they'll tell you 45, but they're never on time. And then at the end of the transaction, you're fighting, and then you've got a big argument with the listing agent. Everyone's upset. It puts a lot of stress on you. So if they say 45 days, put it as 60 days. If they say 30 days, put it at 45 days. Add a little time, and then you have to follow up. Same thing with appraisals. So appraisals right now, because appraisers don't really want to go into properties if they don't have to. Some people are doing drive-by appraisals. Some are waiving the appraisal if the loan is smaller. It's just going to take a little bit longer, okay, for the appraisal to happen. So overall, the closing time is also affected. So make sure you know about the closing time. So ask this to your lender. What are the approval, appraisal, closing times? So you can adjust for it in your contract. Seasoning time, if you're doing anything with overseas money, how long does and even if it's not overseas, some banks will want to see your down payment into a bank account for a number of months before they will approve the loan. So they say, okay, otherwise they may say, okay, well, we want to know where these funds came from. So, okay, you transferred 100,000 from account A to account B, and you show them account B. They'll say, hey, you transferred it within 2 months. We want to see everything in account A. Well, what if account A has other transfers from other accounts? Well, then you're going to have to provide a ton of documentation. It would be better if your buyer is prepared, put the money into an account, let it sit there for 2 months, and then be able to close very smoothly. Okay, these are other small notes. Credit for repairs, if they have anything. It's kind of an optional question. Termite, if we put termite repairs on the contract, is a credit okay? What that means is, instead of doing, let's say there's $2,000 in termite damage, and the buyer says, well, I don't want the termite work because I'm going to tear the house down. Can I just get the $2,000 cash? So we have to make sure the lender is okay with that. And those are things you can ask mid-transaction too. But if you can find out upfront, it will be good to structure the contract correctly. This is kind of a less optional issue, the last one, 2.7, which is maximum leaseback. The leaseback is what we talked about earlier. The seller is going to stay in that property for 2, 3, 4 months, and they're going to use that time to find a new property. A lot of lenders will say, okay, well, the seller can only stay in the property for less than 2 months. If they stay beyond 2 months, or if we have a lease for beyond 2 months, then that property will now be considered an investment property. And as you know, if you've ever closed a transaction, investment loan rate is quite a bit higher. It can be 1/4, 0.5% higher as an investment property compared to a primary residence. So it's important to find out what the max lease back is. So this example transaction was meant to kind of tackle a lot of issues with one transaction. So some transactions are very easy, and some transactions have every challenge you can imagine. So we've got agents. I had to talk to an agent yesterday, and she said, I ran into every single challenge imaginable with my transaction. And sometimes you just have those tough ones, and that's just part of the business. So after you make sure that the the client is qualified, you've got your timeline correct with your lender, you now should call the listing agent. I am surprised to this day how few buyer's agents will call the listing agent before making an offer. Okay, they won't even call. They will just send an email over with the offer and then expect that the offer will speak for themselves. I think one of the biggest values that we bring to our clients is that we can help, especially in today's market, we need to help sell that client. Why, with so many multiple offer situations going on, why should the seller pick your offer over all the other offers, especially if some of the other offers are cash? Why would we pick you guys? So I think you need to call them and tell them, because every listing agent wants to know that the buyer is motivated. So if you're in a multiple offer situation, you need to call them and tell them why they should pick you and how much your clients love the property and how secure it would be, the transaction would be if you gave the deal to your client. The listing agent wants to close the deal. He doesn't want to open the escrow and then have it fall out in 15 days. And then his client is blaming him, saying, hey, I depended on you to pick the right buyer. You picked this buyer and this buyer backed out. Shouldn't you have done a better job screening the buyer? So if you can if you can express how good your client is and how well they'll perform during the transaction for a smooth escrow, that will help you get the property for a listing agent. It's not guaranteed, but it will help you. So questions that you want to ask. 3.1. Number one, do you have multiple offers or do you have any offers? If they say yes, are they over or under asking? Okay, a lot of agents will respond to this. They'll say, okay, well, we're almost at asking. Okay, we're right at asking. We're just a little bit above, or we're way above asking. Sometimes that happens. And then they will also answer questions about cash, okay? Are any of the offers that you have cash? If you are in a situation where your buyer is purchasing with a loan and you're competing against cash offers, you have a disadvantage, okay? Because if you've never held a listing before, or if you haven't been in the business for a while, what will happen is, let's say we have 3 offers. And this is kind of something you'll learn with experience. Let's say you have 3 offers. A listing agent has 3 offers. 2 offers, and let's say it's for this property, $1 million. And both of the non-cash offers come in at 1 million. The cash offer says, hey, I am cash, I can close, I don't have to worry about getting a loan, I don't have to worry about getting an appraisal, I'm a more secure buyer, so I deserve a lower price, okay? So the cash offer says, okay, I'm gonna offer $975. So the cash offer is $25,000 less than the $1 million that they want, that the other offers are coming in at. Every listing agent will do this. They will take your offer, which is the non-cash offer, and they will tell the cash offer, hey, we've got $1 million non-cash offer. Your cash, great. If you can come up to $1 million, we will give you the deal. So every listing agent's job is to get the most secure deal and then also the highest price. So they're going to shop your offer to the cash offer, and the cash offer will get the last look and say, okay, well, yeah, I'm willing to come to $1 million, or I'm not. And so you have a distinct disadvantage if you're not cash. Okay. So there have been many cases where even if you're getting a loan and you're competing with cash, that you can out-compete the cash. There are many tricks. I taught some tricks to one of our agents in Irvine, and she immediately opened 2 escrows with that trick. So it's really important to understand how to compete with these cash offers, okay? And to understand that they're even there. Some agents won't even know that there are cash offers or there are multiple offers, and they'll just submit something. 3.2, what do they want as their desired closing date? Okay, everyone has a plan to move, especially now. Everything is very calculated. Okay, I don't want too many people in my house, so you know, I want to move on this date, and then I don't, you know, I need time to clean and disinfect and move. So everything is needs to be spelled out very carefully. So if the seller wants to move on September 15th, you need to find a way to try to accommodate that schedule, because hopefully it won't cost your buyer anything. But if you can work with the seller's desires, they're going to be more likely to pick you, okay? Same thing with the leaseback. If you can come up with a leaseback term that is good for them, then that's great. So these questions are good up front, because what's going to happen is there's going to be agents who write the offer without talking to the listing agent, without understanding, okay, this is the situation, I need to write the offer like this. And then there's going to be that agent who does their homework and says, okay, I'm going to write the offer A, B, C, D. And if you write the offer in a way that the seller likes right away, you have a better chance of getting accepted immediately, or getting a counter, or they will like you more because you found out what works for the seller. Okay, you might get a second chance, whereas maybe you didn't get a counter offer. You wouldn't have gotten a counter offer if you didn't add those leaseback terms, but now maybe you got a counter. If there are a lot of offers, or if the agent just likes to do things with a deadline, 3.3, it says we need it to know the offer review deadline. Okay. Now, this is a question I'm hoping some of you guys can answer in the chat too. And I do see the questions coming in, and I will answer them. Just to get some feedback, let's say we're making an offer on this example property, and the deadline is next Saturday, okay? August 22. August 22 is the offer review deadline. What do you guys think is the best time to submit? Now, somewhere in the middle, or August 22? What do you guys think? Just type it in the chat if you can. And then I will look through the questions at the same time. So a question that we got is, what is considered way over asking? 50,000 over, 100,000 over on a $1 million property. I would say 50,000 is way over asking. The goal is you don't want to, if you've got a very solid offer, let's say at 1.05 and your property is listed at $1 million, you don't want more offers to come at 1.0 million, 1 million, because it's wasting your time. Then you've got a counter. I'd rather see a higher offer off the bat and just negotiate a higher offer right off the bat and say, hey, listen, we're way over. Like, if your client really wants it, submit something stronger. And that kind of negotiation, you will learn over time. But that is something that I would consider way over. Another question we have is regarding 1031 exchanges. Do we have an effect on the length of closing? 1031 exchange, in terms of the procedure, it's not like a loan. It's not a hard process. It's just a few pieces of paper. So you can do that within a couple of days. It will not affect your length of closing in terms of the paperwork involved in doing the 1031. However, 1031 exchanges have their own timeline. For example, from the date, if you're representing a seller, they're going to buy something else to replace that property. They have to identify the new property within 45 days, and then they've got to close in 180 days. So right now, to find a suitable investment property, I think it's still a challenge. It is a challenge to find something within 45 days, and it's a challenge to close. If you find it in 45 days, it shouldn't be a challenge to close in 108 days. I think the challenge is more to find and actually go into escrow within the 45 days. So if you're doing a 1031 exchange, you need to be super, super careful. And what I would advise actually is doing a reverse 1031 exchange, which is you go out, you buy the property first, then you sell the other one within the 180 days. Because right now we always do what is easy first, difficult first, then easy second. So if it's more, if you're planning any kind of move, and it's not just with 1031s, it could be with your seller. Your seller is trying to move from a low desirable neighborhood, not as desirable neighborhood, into a very, very competitive neighborhood. Then you want to do the more difficult thing first, which is do the buying part first, if possible, and then do what's easy later. So that way your client doesn't end up homeless or doesn't end up without an investment property, okay? Okay, so perfect, we've got some answers, and I think, so if we have an offer review deadline of August 21st, my advice is we submit the offer last minute. So one person said last minute, Wendy said last minute. Some people said the day after, I'm sorry, it should be August 22nd. So yes, August 22nd, a lot of people said August 22nd. That's my preference. The reason is, if you're good at talking to the other agent, throughout the process, if they're willing to answer your call and talk to you, you can call them every couple days. Call them today, call them in 2 or 3 days, call them in 2 or 3 days. And you say, hey, just want to check in on the status. How many offers do you have now? How many offers do you have now? Are they over asking now? Because if you submit it today and that listing agent talks to 5 more agents, they're going to say, oh, we've got this offer. It's coming in at 1.01. The next agent is going to submit, okay, I'm going to submit at 1.011. Then the next agent is going to be 1.012. It's just going to keep going up. So the best thing to do is wait till the last minute, try to see. It's like your view, right? At the end, you're going to have a much better view of what the offers are at, and hopefully the listing agent and you have a good relationship where you can get some of that information to help your client. Okay. How will they counter? So if they have 10 offers, okay, this is not uncommon. Right now, it's pretty common to get even 5, 10 offers. It's not unheard of. How will you counter? Will you just take the best one? If you do, then your offer better be the strongest one that your client is willing to make right from the beginning. If not, they might counter everybody, which is difficult. If I have over 5 offers, I almost never would counter everybody. I'd probably choose the top 3 or 4, depending on the situation. I would counter the top 3. So ask them how you're going to counter, and that will affect how you want to write your offer. So you probably don't want to go in a low ball if they're going to have 10 offers and they're only countering top 3. Okay. So the next call you want to make is you want to call the client. Okay, you have all this information. You've got your loan officer information. You've got your listing agent information, and you share what you learned with your client. And you share, okay, they've got 5 offers. Some are above asking, some are below. There's 1 cash, and they want a lease back of 60 days to their new house is under construction. They need 60 days. Okay. Can we do all that? One thing that I think a lot of agents forget to do, or they don't do as much as they should, is that they need to run comparable sales, okay? Comparable sales means a CMA. Some people call it a CMA, some people call it comparable sales, comps. And basically that's just homes that are similar to the one that they are buying or selling, that have closed within 90 to 180 days, that are very similar in age, lot size, bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage is the most important, location. So if it's next to a railroad track, it'd be a very different value if it was in a nice, quiet neighborhood versus a busy street, or, you know, some Chinese believe in feng shui. And if it's Luzhong, which means the street runs directly into the house, they don't the price will be very different on those. So you need to study those comps. It is not enough to rely on Zillow, and it is not enough to rely on the MLS's version of Zillow's evaluation, which is, I think, Real AVM. Do not use those. You cannot use, and also when you're selecting comparable sales, you cannot just say, okay, find the comparable sales, click one button, and the computer will generate all of them. You shouldn't do it that way. You need to go through and search and find and compare apples to apples, because all those sites, all those automated ways to evaluate properties, they don't consider floor plan, they don't consider condition, they don't consider location. So for example, the Lutong, which is the T Street example, they don't consider that. They don't consider lot shape. They don't put enough weight, or maybe they put too little weight on year built. They don't know if the house has been upgraded. All those things are factors that will affect the price. So you need to choose the comps one by one, okay? One by one. And then tell them about the last thing is 4.3, tell them about the inclusions and exclusions. So, okay, chandelier doesn't come with the property. TV doesn't come with the property. Are you okay with that? And if they're not, you can write on the offer that they are included, and maybe you'll pay extra. Okay, number 5. So once you have talked to the client, you've shown the client all the comparable sales, and you've decided on a price that you want to write the offer for, you write the offer, which we're going to go over in the next page. But you also need more than just the contract. The contract is 5.4, so we've got that. Okay, we've written the offer. You should, as a professional, always have 5.2 and 5.3, which is a pre-approval letter. This is what you got before you had the client go into your car from a bank. And it should be for the amount that you're offering or more. And then you should have a proof of funds, a bank statement, or if they're pulling funds from another closing, you can use the estimated closing statement. And then my advice, especially in today's market, I do it for almost every client that I have. I would do it for every client that I have, is 5.1, a letter of introduction. So here's my client. They're a beautiful family. They're moving to Temple City because they grew up there. They love the schools. They're very financially stable, even during coronavirus. My client is an accountant and is still earning the exact same amount of pay as before. Their credit scores are 800, this and that. Just try to make them strong and stable, okay? And we have samples of these in our, at Iron Realty. If you're not part of our company, we've got a kind of like a knowledge base or a website where we contain a lot of samples and things like that. And we have sample letters of introduction that people have used with some success, okay? So we have those available to them. Okay, some of these questions we're going to cover, so I'm just going to skip them for now. So if I haven't answered your question, don't worry, we will cover them. This page, we are now on page 4. So if you look at the top right of your page, page 4 and 5 is our checklist, okay? And we're not going to go through this much. I just wanted to point out 2 words or 2 areas. If you go to the bottom of page 5, on the bottom left, you'll see seller step 1, okay? We've tried to make this because California has so many attorneys and so many lawsuits and is so liberal that we have to have a form for everything, okay? And that's why we have 83 forms in a transaction. To make that easy, we've done you can do 2 things. The first thing we've done for you, which is tell you what forms are required at which step. So if you are representing a seller, you would just start with seller step 1 and get these forms completed. There are some times where the form is not needed, So if that's true, on the right side, you'll see in italics where it says, you know, here, for example, the trust advisory is only needed when there's a trust sale listing where trustee did not occupy the property. Okay, so if that is not applicable, you can skip the form and not provide that. So you just do that, step 1, and then you go up to step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. There's a buyer step 1 as well here, buyer step 1. So obviously your buyer step 1, you would be writing an offer, which is the residential purchase agreement. So you'd be writing that offer. That's your buyer step 1. They're a little different depending on who you're representing. The second thing that you can do to make this very easy for you, or much easier for you, or 3 things, I guess. The second thing you can do is you can create templates in zip forms. So it'll take a little bit of time the first time you do it. You add all the forms and you can save it as a template. So each time you write an offer, all the forms will be there and you just have to fill them out. So you don't have to go through the checklist and check them off one by one. So use a template if you can. Seller, same thing. So that's number 2, to make your life easier. Number 3, this is what I would recommend if you're a new agent, or if you're an agent who's if you're a high producing agent, the first few times as a new agent, I would try to do the paperwork on my own, okay? That way you learn the process, you learn what's needed, so that way you can oversee a transaction coordinator later on, which is what I would recommend for either agents with a lot of production or agents who are looking to free up their time. Maybe they're part-time, they don't want to deal with the paperwork, or maybe they're not good with the paperwork. Hire a transaction coordinator. They will help you with the paperwork, take care of all this, take care of the checklist. You will still need to tell them and guide them on what your goal is. So for example, how strict do you want to be with the timeline? So let's say tomorrow is when they're supposed to be removing their loan contingency. A strict agent may send them a notice to buyer to perform today. If you don't know what that is, it's basically saying if you don't do what you're supposed to do tomorrow or the next day, I have the right to cancel your transaction, okay? So a strict agent may issue that before the contingency date. So they can issue that 2 days before. So if it's tomorrow, they can issue it today and say, hey, if you don't remove your contingencies within 2 days, I have the right to cancel you. That doesn't mean they will, but they have the right to. So those things, in terms of your practice as a business decision, you need to decide what to do. And it could be different for every situation. If you only have one buyer and you're lucky to have that buyer, maybe you don't want to be so strict. Maybe you just want to give them a little bit more room, a little bit more flexibility, but not too much flexibility. We have some transactions and some agents that have transactions that drag for more than a month past their closing date, and I think that's the limit. Anything past a month after closing date, you need to cancel that transaction. Otherwise, you're continuing to open yourself up for liability, okay? So if you're supposed to close on August 31st, you didn't close on September 30th, you need to cancel that transaction or talk to us and we'll give you advice depending on the situation. If you're extending beyond 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, it's a transaction that will never close, okay? Usually never close, okay? The question we have is, do we have a transaction coordinator in our office? We don't have one in our office, meaning they're not part of our office, but we do have recommendations for transaction coordinators. Some are agents at our office, and we can provide that. We have an affiliate list. We have a list of people that we recommend, or not recommend, but we have a list of affiliates that are available to us. We haven't used everybody, but it is in our Iron Central under our services and affiliates link. Okay, so check that out. We have everything from staging companies to transaction coordinators to our escrow department. Of course, we only list ourselves in there. We have great escrow officers. overall, and the great thing about our escrow is we can rush things if we need to rush them, and you have better service. If there's something wrong with the transaction, you'll be the first one to know, because our escrow officers will look after everybody as they're supposed to, but they will make sure you're notified of the situation if something is looking not smooth. Okay, good. So that's our checklist. I don't want to go into it. We're going to go into the actual forms now. Let's see. Okay. So all the questions we will cover. So I don't think we need to pause. This is the very first form that we're looking at. So if you noticed on the top left of the form, we're on page 6. On the top left, you'll see California Association of Realtors form. Okay. This form, these forms with California Association of Realtors or our logo, these are the only 2 types of forms that we are qualified to read, because these are contracts. Contracts need to be interpreted by an attorney. We are not attorneys, most of us. The vast majority, we do have people who are attorneys and real estate agents, but the vast majority, including me, are not attorneys. We can't read legal language, but we can read this contract because we're trained on it, okay? So if it doesn't have the California Association of Realtors logo, we're not qualified to read it. So if you go to Lennar Homes and you sell a new home to the client, and the client says, hey, read the contract, please, see if there's anything in there. Unfortunately, we can't. They need to take it to an attorney, and that contract is thick, okay? Luckily, Lennar is a reputable home builder. We haven't had any problems, but it doesn't mean there's something in there that may or may not harm your client later on. So make sure that you only interpret a California Association of Realtors forms. And we have our own forms too, but not many. This is a disclosure regarding real estate agency relationship. This is basically a required form by this civil code, you can see. It just tells the client what our job is if we are acting as a seller's agent, and what our job is if we're acting as a buyer's agent. So under here, the main thing is, to the seller, we have a fiduciary duty of utmost care, integrity, honesty, and loyalty. Same thing, actually, you'll notice the same exact wording to the buyer. All that means is you will always look out for the seller's financial interests, especially before your own. So you as an agent, if you have an opportunity to make more commissions, but it sacrifices the seller's price or position or something, you can't do that. It needs to be the seller's first. So if someone says, okay, I'll pay you an extra X commission if you take my offer, which is a little bit lower than the highest, you can't do that. You need to watch out for your seller's fiduciary interest, okay? So that whole form is there. If you are interested in the civil codes, they are on the back, which is this page 7. We will skip. Our IRN forms is responding to Steve's question. Our IRN form is basically an additional disclosure on top of the CAR. It's not replacing anything from CAR. We always prefer CAR forms. Personally, I believe, we've reviewed, they are also another Association of Realtors form, which is AIR. I think it's Association of Industrial Realtors, something like that. But it's basically used for commercial properties. They have their own set of forms. I've read through them. They're not nearly as thorough as the California Association of Realtors form. So anytime you use any form, it should be the CAR form. Try not to use the AR form if you don't have to. Okay. AR form are used a lot with commercial realtors that want to write their own wording. Okay. We've got this special situation where we're going to do this kind of credit, and there's special terms that don't fit in a normal situation. That's what it's for. But CAR form, use that one. Don't write your own wording. Don't write your own addendums. There's probably a form for it. Most of the time there's a form for it, so use the CAR form. This is the PRBS form, which is the possible representation of more than one buyer or seller. This just means that as a brokerage, we represent more than one buyer or a seller. So we may even represent more than one buyer on a property. You know, Agent Mary is representing one buyer and he's buying this 123 Pine Street, and maybe Agent Daniel is representing another buyer trying to purchase this property at the same time. So we have multiple buyers. There have even been situations, and I've been in this situation too, where I will have two buyers and they want to buy the same property. Okay. It's a very tricky situation that we try to avoid. Okay. Some people will end up saying, okay, I'm going to pick one buyer. The other buyer we will refer to another agent. So at least that part is separate. Otherwise, you're writing two offers for two different clients and you know knowledge of both offers, and it can become difficult. Okay. The other thing we have is dual agency here. Same thing. Sometimes we do represent the seller and the buyer at the same time, and that's okay. It's legally fine, but it's a situation where you need to exercise. You need to be very, very careful. Okay, you need to make sure that everybody's interests are being represented, and they need to both be the same. And what I mean by that is, I'll give you an example. Let's say I have a very hot property. I've got 10 offers, I'm representing the seller, and the buyer doesn't have, I have multiple buyers that don't have agents. Now, let's say I have one buyer that is willing to write an offer, but they want to write a slightly lower offer than other offers that I've received, okay? It just happens that that's the case. We cannot force a less qualified buyer to be accepted. We can't force a seller to accept it because we're going to earn double the commission. We can't do that. The offer that we accept, whether or not it's our buyer, it needs to be the offer that we would have accepted, whether or not I was representing or you are representing that buyer. Okay. So they need to be the one you would have accepted anyway. You can't choose them because you're going to earn more commissions because of that. You have to be very careful. There are companies, whole companies, where their culture is to try to double in, and it's not a small company, it's a very big company. And their whole culture is to try to force the double agency because their company will earn twice the amount of commissions. The agent will earn twice the amount of commissions, but we encourage people to be careful, okay? Okay, this is always a fun form, wire fraud. If you guys are not aware of what wire fraud is or have not run into wire fraud, it is where someone gets hacked and or tricked into sending money to the wrong place. So I saw an LA Times article, I think it was LA Times, where a student came to the US, didn't understand things, and she had $40,000, and she got one of those phone calls that says, hey, the Chinese, she came from China, Chinese embassy is looking for you. They want to put you under arrest for money laundering. And so in the end, she got tricked and said, okay, someone told her, oh, I'm the police. In order to avoid this money laundering charge, all you have to do is send all your money over, and then we will verify that the money is clean, then we will return it. And she sent over all the money, and of course it disappeared. So same thing with wire fraud. The only thing that is scary about even more scary than that about wire fraud, is you may not have to do anything, and you may unintentionally transmit information that would cause wire fraud to occur. So what I mean by that is you may be hacked already and you don't even know it, okay? So because we have an escrow department, we go to conferences every year, except maybe this year. And sometimes they have great speakers. One of the speakers that we've talked to that was talking was an FBI agent. And he estimated that realtors are very exposed to being hacked. And the reason is because we're advertising. We put our email out there, we put our cell phone out there, we have our websites, we're constantly interacting with clients, we have a lot of emails with financial information going back and forth. he estimated that basically 100% of realtors have been hacked. Okay, meaning someone else has your password, someone's reviewing your email, someone is in your account looking at things, okay? So because of that, we need to be very careful. And what often happens is a hacker will get into your email and they will see, okay, this person is dealing, Mary is selling a home and her client is going to get the proceeds in her Bank of America account, okay? And so the hacker will go onto Mary's email and then will email the client and say, can you please fill out this information about where you want the funds to be sent to? And then when Mary's client sends it back, they will alter the numbers, okay? And they will change it to their own account. Okay, of course it's signed and everything, but they'll go into Photoshop and they'll modify what they need to. And then it'll go to their account and then they forward that to escrow. And escrow may take it and they say, okay, well, we're gonna send the $500,000 that you got from the sale and we're gonna send it to the account that came from, maybe the client got hacked or maybe the agent got hacked, but we'll send it to that account which belongs to the hacker. The minute the hacker gets that 500,000, he wires it out of the country and it's gone, okay? That is wire fraud and that's the most extreme case. And escrows in our area our main branch is Arcadia. So we have heard of escrows in Arcadia that have been hacked and have lost hundreds of thousands of dollars of clients' money, okay? Our escrow, we've never had any kind of issue with that. Never had a problem. And the reason we don't is because number one, we ask our agents to follow a couple rules. Number one, you should not be dealing with wiring instructions. Agents should not be dealing with wiring instructions. You should provide the client's email or provide the client's phone number to escrow. That way escrow can call and talk to the owner and email the wiring instructions directly. The moment you touch that wiring instruction, if it gets altered in any way, you may have responsibility. So don't touch the wiring instructions. Have them, anything that needs to be filled out, have them fill it out and return it back to escrow. Try not to receive any wiring instructions or proceeds instructions either, okay? So don't get involved with the transfer of money. Just don't. Even with the deposit, okay? Even with the deposit, have escrow send it directly to your client. The second thing that we advise all agents to do is enable what we call two-factor authentication. And I'll type it here. You can Google it. Every email system should have it now. Okay, and what it means is, I'm sure you've had times when you try to log into your email or try to log into your bank account where they will say, okay, we're gonna send you a text. So in order for you to log into your bank account, you have to have your username, your password, and you've got to have your cell phone. So if you don't have your cell phone, a hacker can't get in. Or if the hacker doesn't have the cell phone, the hacker cannot get in. So enable that two-factor authentication. Okay, make sure you write these down. The last thing, we have procedures in our escrow that each time we wire out money, we will call the owner and just say, hey, we want to call you. We want to go over the numbers that you provided. Here we have the numbers, or can you please provide the numbers again? And we make sure that the phone number is verified with your client, okay? Any questions on that? That form usually scares some people, which you should be. But if you take the right steps, you should be fine, okay? And we are always looking for additional ways to protect you and protect our clients. Okay. Okay, next page. We are now on page 10. So we've got about 15 to 18 minutes left. So I will probably go over the first page of this and then we'll stop and then we'll do kind of a little bit of a summary and go from there, okay? Okay, so this is the main purchase agreement. So you can see on the top, residential purchase agreement and joint escrow instructions, RPACA. This is the main form. It is, I believe, 16 pages long, okay? So this is the main kind of meat. This is your main course if you're eating dinner. This actually form is 10 pages long, but with the attachments, it can be more, 16, 17, 18, something like that. Here, I put all the comments in red. So if you have more than 2 buyers, you can use an additional signature addendum. Not a huge thing. Here, this is important. Right here under days after acceptance. So right here where it says, how do we count days? And we have 60 in there. Just if you can write in the comments what you think days mean. Does it mean calendar days, business days? What do you guys think? And I'm gonna scroll to the definition, okay? So we can read it together. Okay, so if you don't know how we calculate days, it's on the very last page. So if you ever need to reference it, it's on the very last page of our purchase agreement, page 10. And what it is 30F says days means calendar days. However, after acceptance, the last day for performance of any act required on this agreement, including closing, shall not include any Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday, and shall be instead the next day. So your deadlines cannot be on Saturday, Sunday, legal holidays, neither can close of escrow. The original reason why they wanted to do this was so that they could take some of the load off of the realtors from having to work 7 days a week. However, as a busy realtor, if you're doing a lot of business, you're going to be working 7 days a week anyway. Okay, so so days always means calendar days, except for one place in the contract, which we'll go over. Hopefully you guys, the one bad thing about Zoom is I can't tell if you guys are sleeping. In person, I can see you guys falling asleep. So here we look at the next, but we'll try to record this so that way if you do fall asleep, we can rewatch it if it's useful to you. The next highlighted section is, well, we'll go over this part first. To agency. Maybe we should go over the top 2. So here's this general property information. We have the buyer's names, we have the address, we have the information, we have the parcel number. Okay, double check the parcel number. I've seen contracts where they wrote an offer, they updated the address, but they didn't update the parcel number. We need to make sure we have an accurate parcel number. And then this is the closing date. So one question we get a lot is, shouldn't I fill both of these out? Close of escrow shall occur on this date or 60, no, it should just be one or the other. So if you have a closing date that you want to set a date. So for example, we want to close on October 31st because our 1031 needs to be finalized by November 15th, then I would put a date here. If you have a, if you're okay and you're just going to go by standard timeline, most people, most transactions will go by this date. But you know, it could be that you know you're trying to get into school registration happens on this date, so you need to fill in here. So you can use either one, not both. Here we put seller's broker's firm. So anytime it says the broker, that means IRN Realty. Agent is you. So you are a salesperson or broker associate. Okay, simple as that. So you don't need to put in your name on both. That's incorrect. You need to put the company and then your name. On initial deposit, this is important. This is the one place in the whole contract where we are not going by calendar days. We are going by business days. This is only the one place. So here, if you look, it says buyer shall deliver deposit directly to escrow holder by electronic funds. That's the default, okay? And then there's a checkbox if you want to do something else. So the default is by electronic funds transfer. That's a wire, or a cashier's check, or a personal check. So if you check one of these, that means they can deliver in one of these ways. And then you are to deliver those funds within 3 business days after acceptance. So if we have an acceptance today, which is August 15th, the very first next business day is Monday. Second day is Tuesday, Wednesday. So Wednesday, 5 p.m., your deposit should be into escrow within 3 business days. Anytime we calculate days, the acceptance day is considered as day 0. Then the next day is day 1. Okay. If we scroll down, we can look at increased deposit. We hardly ever use that form, this section. Let me see if I can scroll over. So we almost never use this line. So just look at the template. We post this template and save this template if you're part of another company, but we post this template in our IRN Central so you can download it and just copy it. So we have brand new agents that have never written an offer. They copy it. They replace some things like the address and little things like that. And then they send me the offer to review, and it looks very, very good. So that's one way that you can look very professional, even if you're a very new agent. I think most experienced listing agents, they can tell you're a new agent right away. They can sniff you out, number 1. Number 2, they look at your license number. So for example, my license number is 01707. Okay, I got it 15 years ago. David is 009. So you got it way before me, 40 years ago. But the newer agents with like license 02, I've seen 021, and I'm sure there's going to be 022 soon. We can tell right away you're a new agent. One way to try to avoid acting like a new agent also is just make sure your offer comes out and is written properly. No listing agent will want to choose your offer if they feel like they're going to have to coach you through the transaction. Okay. May brought up a good point, and it was covered up by my camera, which is here, and something I missed because it was covered up. The deposit line, okay? The deposit line, we have under it written 3% or $10,000. And I like to share stories with you guys as much as possible so I can make it real. The reason we have 2 options is $10,000 is the maximum small claims case size, okay? In a competitive offer situation, most listing agents will want you to write in 3%. So even if it's 500,000, which is kind of, you know, entry level type home, maybe 400,000, it's already going to exceed the 10,000. So it's hard to get a $10,000 deposit accepted. But if you can, and if they don't have any offer, maybe you want to write $10,000 in, because if there is an issue where the seller is trying to keep your deposit, you can fight for it in small claims court without an attorney's fees, okay? Once it passes $10,000, you've got to hire an attorney. And an attorney is going to cost you $30,000, like I said before. It doesn't make sense to hire a $30,000 attorney to go after $10,000 or $15,000, okay? Normally, it won't get to that over a deposit. However, if you're worried about an agent, so I had a case, we had a case a couple years ago. Our agent did everything perfectly, okay? And she protected her client too. She put in $10,000, the other agent accepted. Our agent and their buyer went to do an inspection, and then they found out like some of the plumbing pipes were loose. There were gaps in the drywall. The property needed work to be habitable for that client. The client decided to back out before removing their contingencies. Now, 99% of agents would understand and say, okay, yeah, this is a very, very standard case, very common, very normal. We cancel, we return your deposit. Good luck on your next transaction. However, this agent, I'm not sure why, had a very, very big ego, and also was part of a large company. Okay, so our client filed. He wanted to keep the $10,000 deposit, and then he wrote 3 pages citing all these civil codes about why he gets to keep the deposit. And I didn't respond at all. I just said okay. And then so we immediately filed a claim against him, and we went to court, and I acted as their witness to explain what happened. And the agent was there, of course, and she acted as a witness too. And we were able to get that $10,000 back because that agent was 100% wrong. Okay. The judge was upset at him for bringing the case, actually, because it's so simple, and he's like a manager at a different company. So anyways, it does happen. We want to, if we can, we get that $10,000 back. Once it's over that, we have to file a real suit. Okay, this is a loan amount. So here, usually we would have written, hopefully you guys have a pen and paper, pen and handout. We will write in here the offer we're going to make. Let's say we're going to make a $950,000 offer. So the program will automatically do it, but if you put, what I would do is I would write it here next to dollars, 950,000. Initial deposit, we'll do 3% deposit. So 3% deposit is 28,500. And we've still got people who did not get the handout. So I want to make sure you guys get that. Make sure you download it, print it. Hopefully you can print it double side because it is thick. Okay. So what we would write is we would write 28,500. So I might write it here. Let's see. I've never used this before. 28,500. Okay. And let's use a lighter color. Okay. Okay, we're going to write it there. Our loan amount, let's say we're going to do, I don't know, 20% down. So what that means is we're going to get a 80%. Sorry, it's adding all these things. We're going to get an 80%. Jeez. Going to get an 80% loan. So if we do an 80% loan, we're talking about, and we're offering 950. Remember that. We'll fill out the numbers and then we'll continue with the rest next time. 760,000. Thank you, May. 760,000. We would put that right here. Sorry, my computer calculator wouldn't let me work with the Zoom. Okay. So we're done with that. Okay. So now we're going to undo the annotate. Okay, now we're going to scroll down. Oh, that's not useful. Okay. Anyways, write that in. Okay, I know how to write it. Put it here. Sorry, I'll do better next time. Okay. So what is the remaining balance here? Perfect, thank you, May. The balance here is 161,000, okay? So we'll write it here. Jeez. So this will be 161,500. Okay, and then at the bottom, we would end up having a 950,000. Okay, we're just gonna. Okay, so those are things that you should write in. Last note, and then we'll go over a quick summary. Here, if you're an all cash offer, you would check here. You would obviously have no loan amount. In your first loan area, you have an area where you can write not to exceed a certain percentage. and pay points not to exceed 1%, something like that. This is all written. There's 1% and there's 5% are written in. Now the rate is much lower than when I created the handout, so it's going to be different. But what this means is basically, if you can't find a loan that has a rate that is better than 5%, let's say the rate, you can get a loan, but the rate is 5.25%, you can cancel the transaction and get your deposit back, okay? Sometimes, if you leave this blank, and it really doesn't happen often, but if you leave it blank, a listing agent may say, hey, you cannot cancel because of the loan contingency because I can find you a hard money lender who will charge you 12% interest and loan you the money. So adding this number here will help protect your client. Same thing with the points. You know, if you have minimal points, maximum points that your client wants to pay, maybe it's 0. You can put that there. Okay. We don't really have second loans often at all anymore, and that should be it. Okay, so 2 things. I always like to start and end on time, so we've got about 2 minutes according to my clock. I'm going to skip all the way to the last page, and you can skip there with me, or I can show it on the screen. Before we go over the summary, we'll go over a couple points in the summary, okay? I know it's a long 79 pages, so I tried to kind of summarize a lot of different tips coming from our experience as management and try to condense it into, it's 10 tips. I really have like 15 or 16, but we've kind of condensed it. I'll add more later. But before we do that, if you are a new agent and you're not from Ireland and you're interested, I had a couple of people say, oh, I want to know how your commission structure works. Or I'm just starting out my real estate career. What's important for me? Those are all questions that are great. And I was hoping to set up, if you guys want a separate, we wouldn't do it in the class, but we would probably do a separate time. Maybe if there's enough people interested, we can do it next Saturday, maybe half an hour before, where we can talk about the company, our commission structure, answer any real estate career questions that you guys have at 9:30 next week. We just don't want to do that in front of 150 people that we have on. So if you guys are interested in that, just type in your email and I'll send you a second invite into the chat, and then we'll schedule that. If not, then we can continue and the same time at 10 a.m. next Saturday. Okay, so cheat sheet. So this is something that you know, especially as a new agent, even as a seasoned agent, you can just print it out, and it's like a summary of the most common issues we run into. Thousands and thousands of transactions, which issues do we run into the most? So number 1, remember that, number 1, if you need help on a form, see the samples on IRN Central. We do have some samples on the form, like the purchase agreement, or if you need the introduction letter, or even other samples. Use those samples, draft your own version, send it to one of our managers. We review every contract that you guys send to us, and we will return it back to you all marked up. So sometimes we have people who didn't use the sample and they send us almost a blank contract, and we will just, if it's too much, we'll just circle it. You need something here, and need something here, because we need people to gain experience, not for us to just do it for you. And we'll say, you need something here, you need something here, you need something here. Or if it's small corrections, hey, this wording isn't clear, change this wording. Or sometimes people, English isn't their first language. So English is their second language, and they want to draft an addendum, or they want to write some wording on other terms. They'll call us and they'll say, hey, you know, I need some help. I don't know how to write this in English, but let me explain it to you in Chinese. You can talk to me. I can speak both Chinese, and I can understand a lot better than speak. But I've never had a problem drafting an addendum for an agent. Cindy, and then we've got David, will help you translate, okay, and make sure you have the right wording on the forms. Number 2 issue that we run into very often is double check the square footage before you write an offer. Okay, this is a number 1 cause for lawsuits, where the MLS square footage, I don't know where the listing agent came up with, oh, I estimate it to be 5,000 square feet. Well, no, it's really 3,500. So we need to check the assessor, and I'll show you how to do that next time. We need to also check the MLS, and then we also need to do the appraisal, and there are forms for that. Okay. Number 3 is always do a market analysis before you make an offer. And we'll start next time on a story about why we need to do a market analysis. I forgot to include that. I need to write that note. Trying to always get better. Okay. So, okay. So we'll start off next time with that story about the square footage. Market analysis, not square footage. Okay. Multiple offer situations, and this will be our last one for today. We call our agent before we write an offer, and we try to find out price and terms to win the deal, and we express the benefits of selling to your client. So we want to tell them what's the benefit of selling to your client, and then this is something I highly recommend that very few agents do, but will make you stand out as an excellent agent, which is write a letter of introduction for your client that can be given to the seller. Some sellers, they own the home for 30 years, watch their kids grow up in that home. And having a letter saying that, hey, we're a family, we're gonna be raising our kids in the school district, we're excited about the park across the street, we're gonna be here for a long time. The seller sometimes will like that and will give you a shot at getting the property better than other agents, okay? Just make sure it's truthful and you're not lying. Because if you write a letter saying, oh, family's gonna move in and then you tear the house down, there's going to be a big problem, okay? Okay, so I guess we'll stop here. I will make a note. We're gonna talk about this market analysis example and story. I will stick around for the few minutes while I do have some questions here, and then we will see you next Saturday. Thank you for coming. We welcome you, and we're very appreciative that you're here. Thank you.